Janet mentioned, today we have Chaplain Krista Hull here to talk about, as Janet said, heartbreaking but empowering subject today. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the microphone to Krista.
All right, so hopefully you can hear me well. If you need me to adjust anything, please tell me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to tell you a little bit about me, how I got here, why I do this, and has anyone spoke here before about human trafficking? But some of you may have been to a movie more recently.
Yes.
That kind of got a big picture in some way. Okay, I am going to briefly go over parts of that and connect it to each of us and how can this actually be happening right in our own backyard, not just in another country, not just in the inner cities, but really anywhere. So, but thank you so much for having me today. I love when I get a chance to speak about what I have become so passionate about. I founded Redeem and Restore Center 10 years ago with the plan to open a home where women who have been broken by exploitation and trafficking can come and heal and rebuild their lives and begin again. And finally, as of last winter, we did secure a property in Waukesha. And as of today, and so again, I'm a little more casual today and a little more just to go with the weather, and because I did go to the home today and I was shoveling with the big snowflakes, and of course I wasn't putting on a hat, so we just, whatever, and wore my boots and, so, but the city inspector came through today and finally approved all of our permits for all the construction. We are done with that. We've been practicing and training with the staff. I need 3 more people to work at the home, but we are moving forward and should be opening very soon. Basically, I have to have the state come through 2 different parts of the state so we can get licensed as a group home. That's what we need to house more than 3 women living at a time that aren't related in our house. We have to do that according to Wisconsin, which has made things very annoying and difficult, but we will do what we have to do. So I'll move on. All right, so you get to meet me here when my life was dramatically changing in many ways. Here I'm 11 years old. My mom had just gotten married this year in 5th grade to my stepdad, who came with a sister and a brother. Before that, I really didn't have a family. My mom worked full time. I often lived at my grandparents' or my aunt and uncle's. But all of a sudden, I had a home and I had a family on weekends. They came over and I had a coach, my stepdad. I got to play t-ball, and in many ways it was the best 3 years of my life in middle school. But unfortunately, we'll go back a little bit. Hence I was alone. My mom got pregnant at the age of 17 from a very abusive boyfriend, and she accepted the abuse until he tried to abuse her and throw furniture while she was holding me, and then stood up and went, "Oh, Mama Bear can't let her baby get hurt." And then she finally left him, because back then you were supposed to marry who you were with, you had a child, so that's what she did. So basically since birth, my father had abandoned me. I did not see him till I was in high school as a senior. And so my mom did the best that she could, fighting through surviving. I was loved by grandparents and an aunt and uncle, and that was good. But right as my mom was preparing to get married is when I first began to be sexually abused by an older boy. And that I didn't tell anyone. Because of this abandonment, because of this disconnection, I had no relationship, and I was a kid, and I had no relationship to tell someone that someone was doing something that was awkward and uncomfortable to me. I looked at him at first and thought, he's cute, I want him to like me, but what are you doing? This is really not what I like. I don't understand. So I held that all my years until high school. And high school, still, no one really knew, but as a troubled teenager with hormones and liking boys, from learning from experience and also learning from staring at the porn magazines next to my uncle's toilet. I learned if I wanted boys to like me, I would let them do whatever they wanted so that I would be liked, which led to lots of problems. So here is my whirlwind, messy childhood. I very well could have been a girl that was exploited. I was abused, I was abandoned, I was rejected. That was what I had to deal with in moving forward in my life. We all have different struggles, right? We all have different circumstances. No one's family is perfect. Unfortunately, 1 in 4 girls will be sexually abused before the age of 18. 1 in 7 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 18 for the first time. And once it happens once, it's much easier to let it happen. I say that very loosely. Let it happen again and again. And that abuse right there is, coupled with everything else in life that throws at us, can lead to very bad boundaries and allowing people to do things to us that we should never allow. Hence, why we have so many problems in our communities, in our families. Life is hard. Sometimes it's when we're older that we struggle with things. When we go through broken marriages or broken relationships or death of someone so close to us, there are things in life thrown at us all the time. We all have different stories and different heartaches, but there are parts of things that we need to learn and grow from, not just survive and move on. And that is what I did for a long time. I just survived and moved on. I am, if anyone knows about an Enneagram, I'm an 8. That means I'm a bulldozer. My personality is I'm very driven, and I will do what needs to be done. I will figure it out. But in that, when you're not healthy, is very lonely and very empty. But again, I can grow and learn just like all of us, right? There is hope. We can learn from other good relationships, which I did. And for me, it was a few key relationships and also learning about God. And God made himself very real to me when I was a young girl and in high school. So I was one of those strange children who was a disastrous mess in high school, but I ran away to Bible college for my freshman year to run away to try to have a different life. But all this came with me, unfortunately. But it was the beginning. I am thankful that I was never exploited because what I had to deal with was just plenty. Thank you very much. I didn't want any more. But many have dealt with much, much worse. So part of my story is why I'm here, because of my loneliness, because of my rejection, because of the abandonment, my desire to be there for others that have been lonely, been rejected, not supported, no one in their corner, no one cheering them on, no one supporting them, no one encouraging them. That is really why I'm here and why I do what I do today. Why I became a chaplain, why I became a crisis intervention specialist, and why I started a nonprofit to serve women. So just to clarify what human trafficking is, this is the federal definition of human trafficking. They use one of 3 or all of the 3 methods of force, fraud, or coercion to get someone to do what they don't want to do. And why do they do it? It is the subjugation to involuntary servitude, peonage, debt bondage, slavery. All those words are trying to cover all the bases that we can think of, how someone can use someone. We've studied about slavery. Again, it is about owning someone. That is how they treat them. They are a product. They are no longer a person. You work for me, you're mine, with much stronger words. Did you notice it says 18 or older? So technically, by law, if they are under age 18, we should not have to prove the force, fraud, or coercion because they're under the age of 18. Unfortunately, that's not always how it goes with law enforcement or the justice system, because everyone has their own filter, their own ideas, and they look upon someone. Again, there's 12-year-old girls that are fully developed, and they look at them, or maybe partially developed, whatever, or see the pictures that were posted of them online, and they look at them think of them as a slut, a whore, a prostitute, and don't see them as a broken, hurting child. So, again, by federal law, you should not have to prove that, but unfortunately still sometimes there's, hence why we don't have the safe harbor law here in Wisconsin for children. But for adults, we must prove the force, fraud, or coercion. But I also want to add, much of this starts before the age of 18. And when you become 18, I don't know if this worked for you, or 21, magically something switched in your head and you just had it all figured out no matter what you went through. So even, again, yes, they are an adult by age, but I will tell you, if the abuse is, however level of abuse that they've experienced, when that started and when it became repetitive, they broke. They don't fully develop by age 25 like the rest of us that had some more nurturing and more love. The abuse stops growth in the maturity of the emotions and the mental processes. So really, as I've just talked about, is my example, and giving you the hint, I want to spell it out. Vulnerability. It all comes down to vulnerability. You can't use someone, exploit someone, abuse someone if they're not vulnerable. If they know who they are, if they know that they're safe, if they're not going to let someone push them around or make them feel a certain way, you can't control that person. But when they're under the age of 25, obviously, you're most vulnerable because you're still growing, you're still learning. But if you have a broken family or any form of abuse, physical, emotional, mental, poverty, that is obviously a vulnerability because you are trying to do things to get things, to live, to place to live, eat. Combining that all together. I have my own language sometimes. I talk too fast, sorry. Substance abuse. Dreams. Yes, a vulnerability can be a dream. You can have big dreams of going somewhere, doing something, and people can use that against you to try to lure you, manipulate you, and get you stuck. Homeless, obviously, but what is the core issue of all these problems of abuse, of broken families, is everybody wants to know that they are valuable, that they are loved, and they are seen. We all need that as humans. And if we aren't getting that, we settle for whatever we can get, right? So yeah, this is getting a little depressing, just a little bit, right? But I'm gonna get you a whole swirl of emotions here, but this is the reality. This is what we see in families and kids, and then the more broken, the more vulnerable, the right person comes along to manipulate for, again, domestic abuse, or even servitude as a slave and selling them for sex. The best stats are, again, the best guess. It's like we don't know who every person is that has gone through this, but now that people's eyes have been opened and a lot of people like to research, and that there's actually grants to research things, we can learn lots from research, but again, there's still a lot of guesstimates because we can't ask every person. But 58% of those trapped in exploitation are women. And that also makes sense logically because strip clubs are mainly with women, not men. Boys and men do get exploited and do get trafficked, no question. They get sexually abused, just as boys. But again, most of the viewing, the looking is of women. So it is more women that are exploited, but again, it happens to anyone and everyone. And I like this picture because it shows chains, but yet it's not a real chain. Because a lot of the chains are mostly I cannot speak today. Invisible, that's the word. Threats, intimidation, manipulation, those are not things you can point out. Bruises you can point out. And again, even with that, in abusive relationships, some people really know where to bruise you, where to hurt you, where they can't be readily seen. But again, the emotional and mental abuse helps control so that you don't talk either. So where does this happen? It happens where there's vulnerable people. Got that part, right? But let me give you some examples. There's a whole bunch of them. Obviously, pornography. We've heard of pimps, right? We've heard of prostitutes. Well, a pimp is a trafficker. A trafficker has only been around, that word, trafficking, for, gosh, a little over 10 years. So that is a newer word. to expand over just the thought of a pimp, but they are that same meaning. Sex tourism, you can book trips in other countries that include sexual acts. Or, you know, when you go to sporting events, maybe you've seen some of those. People like to party, and if they like to party for sex, well, they can book those things too when they're planning their travels. Escort services, especially near Las Vegas, where in a few counties it is actually legal to sell sex. Truck stops, brothels, fronted businesses. Gosh, now it's probably 4 years ago in New Berlin. An Asian woman was exploiting other Asian people and keeping all the money. She was selling sex in her massage therapy, but she was taking all the money. She was the pimp. Social media and websites. Again, as more and more as you see the connectivity online, there is webcamming, there's hookups, apps that we have to hook up and meet at hotels and various places, high schools. I think 5 years ago, I'll give you my guesses, the 10 years is kind of blurry. We'll just say about 5 years ago in Minnesota, there was a high school cheerleader who dated an older guy, and he was selling her, and then he got her to recruit to make things better for herself. The whole cheerleading squad all became trafficked by that trafficker. Homes. It is even family members. Sometimes not the parents, sometimes an aunt or an uncle, but sometimes it is even the parents. So it can happen anywhere. And one I didn't say we do outreach in strip clubs. And I will tell you, strip clubs is not just dancing and getting money. They have a pole and a dance, and they wear very little clothes. Some states you can wear none. It really doesn't matter. It really doesn't make any, because they're pulling it down for shoving the money. And then they have stalls. Yes, so even though it is illegal in Wisconsin to sell sex, all the officials, everybody knows when they open up these strip clubs, there are stalls. Like there's one I'm envisioning right behind them. They're like mini booths behind the bar where you may go and have sex and get cash and get paid. There are party rooms where you may have sex and get cash and get paid. This is what happens in our strip clubs, but yet it's legal to have a strip club, but it's illegal to sell sex, but everyone knows it happens in strip clubs. Just to let you in on a little secret. So I pulled a few articles that I haven't updated in a while because they're still just good articles. Trafficking happens through work, not just sex, but I will tell you, even southeast Wisconsin, northern Wisconsin, wherever there's farms, often there can be exploitation, but they're just used because they are exploiting them and they own them, they use them for sex as well. Why not? They're already theirs, so they do. Here, 25 were arrested in a sting, thanks to the Wisconsin Department of Justice in Vilas County. Again, a nice place where I have vacationed a few times. And here's a bunch of faces of who was arrested for purchasing sex in, was this Green Bay? Brown County area. Again, there is no look, there is no location. It is what they've decided in here and in here. The people who buy, the people who traffic, it's just, they've made justifications. You know, we've all justified things. They just keep justifying. Over 60% of buyers are married and have children. So it's not that they, be very blunt, that they can't get it somewhere else, that they have to pay for it. It is something in their mind about control, about acting out porn. Those are usually the reasons why they do it. Here, a Stevens Point man was arrested when they were doing a child trafficking sting. So they pretend they're a kid, have a picture, and they have these connections, and they catch them so that hopefully they can stop them from purchasing the actual child. That's the intent of those. And here, a mother. You've heard of all the drug issues and the drug abuse that has escalated since COVID. Suicide, everything bad has escalated when everything shut down. But this was before that, but even so, when you're on drugs, you might even sell your own kids. And that is what she did. Or a dad. I don't know what his reasons, because I don't know anything about drugs about this man. He might have just been a horrible nightmare who had sold his 4-year-old child.
Oh.
This can be anyone in your family, in your community, in your neighborhood. It is not about a location. It is about what people justify and make decisions about, and vulnerability. So you need a few things for human trafficking to happen. You need a vulnerable people, which become the product. You need some type of a business leader of some sense who wants to take control and make some money and have some power. You have to have the demand, the people who want to purchase the product. That's a business. And the demand with the internet and with apps has increased exponentially over the last few years because the ease of setting up appointments. They don't have to stand on street corners and sell them anymore. They still do sometimes, but most of it all online. And so most believe that human trafficking is the #1 industry, the legal industry in the world. Oops, shoot. Well, I skipped that one, we'll go back to. Here is 5 arrests of 2 women. So you can see they look kind of normal in the first arrest. They kind of don't look so bad, but you can see this is the outside. And I will tell you the outside heals exponentially faster than what's inside, which can take lifetimes to heal. I have to go back because I want to show this one. I went too fast with my little finger. These are people who all were arrested as the pimp, as the trafficker. Again, I want you to see it. It is not a certain look or a certain age. When I was in Baltimore, I remember we were doing some outreach there, and the lady was telling me that she had met 2 ladies that were being trafficked by a 14-year-old boy. It was his family business, and so he just picked up the business and knew how to make some money. And they were that vulnerable and that broken that they didn't get away from a 14-year-old boy. Again, this is not healthy people thinking. Us and our normal thinking and somewhat of a healthy position would be like, there's no way. I'm out of here. Who do you think you are, little punk? I'm gone, calling the cops. But when you are broken and hurting and very vulnerable, you don't think normal. You do things that we wouldn't do when we're in a healthy situation. And this is how people traffic other people. And so you're just gonna see these pictures again real quick.
So that's the transformation of that same
Of
person.
the 5 arrests of each of the same people, yes. So one trafficked person is not exactly the same as the other. There's many characteristics that are the same. They've been vulnerable from something. And here is just a little glimpse of, here's a 14-year-old who ran away from home because of some type of abuse. Oh, I apologize. That's the problem with having my phone. Sorry. We're back, yes, there we go. She runs away, she meets a guy who promises to care for her and help her. Oh, but wait, you gotta help me pay for things. So you're going to go and be with this person. Well, but he loves me, so, and he is gonna help me, so okay, not that she wants to, but again, in that vulnerable situation, believing someone cares for her, she might let him, or he could force her, or he could beat her up. Again, no story is exactly the same. There's lots of similarities. But now she's a little older. Now she's been arrested. She's an adult. She can get thrown in jail. And the police, many of them used to say, let's go pick up the trash. That was the girls on the street corner. Because again, they're about stopping people breaking the law. It was illegal to sell yourself for sex, right? So that's their job, to arrest people. There has been training and stretching on that in different departments, but again, that's law enforcement's job. But then they go to the hospital because they've been beaten so bad. And sometimes, again, out of ignorance, not understanding, looking at a person, why are you staying with them? Why don't you just leave? What's wrong with you? Again, the shame, putting more shame on them for them being so stupid from not getting out of this bad situation. And so then it's this cycle of no one else wants me. Everyone else tells me exactly what the trafficker tells me. I'm a loser. I'm only good for this. There is nothing else. again, all the abuse makes them stay in this cycle that they can't, even if the trafficker doesn't want them anymore, because I met a girl that at that age, she was branded like a product by 5 different pimps. He didn't want her anymore because she was so used up. But all she knew then was like, well, what do I do? I was sold at 8 and now I'm 25. And so she just stood on the street corner, sold herself for a sex act so she could get high and not have to feel. So when you go through this extreme abuse, you are broken, shattered as a person. And everything that makes you a person, the physical, the emotional, the psychological, the relational, and the spiritual. So how do we just get you a job, get you a house, get you on assistance, and you'll just be okay? There is no quick fix, there is no pill, there is no quick answer, because they've been shattered. But the things that they didn't get, the things that are opposite of what they do need, is what Redeem and Restore Center is about. We have been walking alongside women in 3 surrounding counties for over 8 years. They have come to us through our events. I speak places and they come up, or their family comes up and talks to me about them, or volunteers that we have had someone in their family that we have worked with as well. We are about coming alongside them and being that consistent, supportive, relational person that they need to help them see that they are still valuable, that there is a life worth living separate from what they've known. We've met women that are just living off the government, somehow have gotten out of that life, but just survive off of the government. And again, it's not really living, but yeah, it's a little better, but they're just surviving. And then we have met women that have just come out and we have sent to emergency shelters in other states, because there isn't one here. And some had some good supportive families, so we've just been a friend and walking alongside them and supporting them. We are part of a National Trafficking Shelter Alliance, so everything I have been planning and working and building, they were not my great ideas. I'm not that smart. I steal everyone else's great ideas. I've learned from others elsewhere. We have been building the team and the staff to provide, so I've trained advocates that we support women right now, and now I've been training the staff to be in the home to help the women on a daily basis or weekly basis, depending on how often they come in. And I'll speed it up. But I wanted to give you a good circle of kind of the yucky parts and where we're going. So now I want to touch on, because this could be someone. You could run into someone in your own family or your neighborhood. And so what are the signs? How do you know? And they're not easy. They're not, there's not a badge on your head. But again, it could be that they don't like to look you in the eye. They're depressed. Suddenly wearing something more expensive, or talking about hanging out with older people. Again, this might not mean they're exploited, but it does mean trouble no matter what, so somebody better pay attention. So all these things would mean some not good things, so please pay attention regardless if you think it's exploitation or not. Tattoos, again, the branding could just be a picture. It could be a name, it could be something simple, and it usually is on the neck or the wrist or the back, but again, that would be someone you're close to, you would see that of. But more withdrawn, depressed, something going through. Again, they could just be having anxiety. But why are they having anxiety? What is causing the anxiety? So again, it's still things we can look into and try to find out. A couple years ago in Brookfield, more than a couple years ago, Brookfield, a family was indicted and arrested because they had brought a foreign national to be their slave in their home. I met a young girl in Baltimore when I stayed in a home there for a while, that she was in a very affluent religious home, and she was their sex slave, and they shared her with other people that came to their house. So again, it can be anyone. But if you see, there are some restaurants that have had some issues. Lots of foreign people again, that doesn't mean, if there's a lot of Mexican people at a Mexican restaurant, it probably doesn't necessarily mean they're exploited. It means they got the right people cooking the good food, because that's the best food ever. I'm really Mexican, if you didn't know. But hey, again, it's not that obvious, but if there are things that are unsettling, it is good for you to ask questions. It is good to dig in and see, is people okay here? Do they need someone to help them? And it isn't, oh, are you being exploited? Oh, are you being trafficked? Are you safe? Are you cared for? Can you do what you want to do? You know, and again, you can't just ask a stranger that. They're not going to tell you that. But, I mean, they'll show up at your Starbucks. They're there. They're at some nice restaurants. They're at fast food places. You will meet victims and perpetrators at all these places. So what to do? Again, if it's an emergency situation, you would call 911. There is no question. That is it. There is this hotline, and we have another hotline that's on our website as well that is specific for survivors or victims who are looking for some direction or some help. This one is for anyone of like, I saw this, you know, I don't know if it's real, I don't know if this is really exploitation, but I'm concerned, could you look into it? You can text or call this number, and they will try to get local area enforcement to help look into it to see if there is something to find there. What we do, again, is we walk alongside women to help them with their physical needs. This was the woman that was sold at 8. She's only 26 in this picture. She had a very abusive family, left alone without her mother, and went into a strip club, and her college professor encouraged her, yeah, why not? Good job. So she did. And then had a pimp. And so mental needs, again, here she playing the violin as she played as a child before she was raped by the bus driver at age 14 and ran away. Relational needs. A mother with 4 children is now taking care of her 4 children. Spiritual needs, again, everything in tandem. We can't just work on the physical and think you'll be okay. All of it works together. If one part is broken, it messes with the rest of us. So we need to work on all the areas in tandem to help actually bring someone to healing or something better, to hope. I have things you can look for in boys and girls, red flags. I have some cards here if you would like them. Another thing that Wisconsin has put out, it's sort of okay, but even our state and even our government is still more focused on international than national. And again, to me, people are people. They're important no matter where they came from, but we keep pretending that it doesn't happen to our own citizens and our own families. But they have a card here too. There is some more information at that back table. If you want to sign up for our newsletter, you can go do that on our website or sign up right over there. We have another card with some more information. But we are about building up our communities. We are with the awareness, with the understanding. And then again, if you run into something and you're curious, you can call me. You can email me. I want us to build healthier people, healthier families. I've actually done teaching on Enneagram, on our strengths, because if we don't know who we are and we can't believe that we are valuable, then how can we stand up for ourselves? So I'm sorry, I talk a little fast. I try to share enough, but not too much, to fit it all in, to give you a good understanding and where we're at and why we have to pay attention. But if you have a few minutes, if you'd like to ask questions, there is no stupid question. Just saying, there really isn't. Maybe this is the first time you really ever heard anything about human trafficking and you are just freaked out. Ask me any question, please. I'm here to help you.
I actually have one. So we think this isn't among us, but just by seeing those signs and you putting that out there, if we see somebody that we suspect maybe might be in trouble, at somebody that you're waiting on, or somebody that you're teaching, or somebody, how do you approach that person? Without them making, what if we're wrong and then we assumed that? Just like call me, or are you saying, I don't know,
Yeah, and that is such a broad thing, but also be cautious in going in front of someone, first of all, because again, you may assume too much.
Exactly.
But if you are just come as a caring person, you see someone hurting, and you just approach it as, are you in trouble? Do you need help? No one's gonna get mad that you care about them. If there's just something that you can't approach, but you see some odd things, like I worked for a surveyor, and the surveyors were at a property in Mequon, and they said, well, there's this Russian lady, then there's this other lady who talked in another language, and there's other people at this house, and they've been there multiple times. I'm like, yeah, give me these details. I'm texting it in to law enforcement. So I want them to check this out because what's going on at this house? So there was signs of something wasn't right, and so I just passed on the information and let them dig into it. So really, again, if you're just a caring person to see someone hurting, if not, if there's just other disturbing things that you don't feel you can approach, or if they're with someone, don't approach, just text it in the hotline where you're at, the information. They don't need information on you, they just need information on what you saw. So, yes ma'am.
At your new center that you're opening up, are you doing like kind of day workshops, or do you have women that will be living there and residents, or what's the?
Yes, we will have, we will work up to it. Up to 6 women at a time will be able to live there, up to 18 to 24 months, to really peel away all the layers of lies and start putting in a lot of truth and helping them dream and hope and do work to move forward. And so yes, it's 24/7. We will have people there. During the day, it's kind of some basic programming. It's based off the individual, but there's general things we'll do with each thing. We'll explore animal therapy, writing therapy, music therapy. We're exploring all of them, but again, not all of us are more musically inclined or creative inclined, but we'll expose them to all those, but then whatever is working for them is what they'll do, plus have mentors come in and share their gifts, life skills, things like that, to pour into them, just much like our kids, but an intensified daily thing in the home, to pour into them and help build them back up. Yes, dear.
2 things. Where are you located in Waukesha, and how do people find you?
So, yep, we are located in Waukesha. We are undisclosed location. And so only vetted and background checked volunteers and mentors come to the home. But we are found by our website, by social media, and by the Trafficking Alliance, the Safe House Project also. So we'll get referrals from other places, and then once we're officially opened, we will also let law enforcement in the area know. We are not an emergency shelter, so that's where law enforcement may necessarily not really care that we're there, but we still want to let them know because we are that next step from emergency. This is, okay, you've had some support, and now you think you might want to try to keep working towards this. Now this is where we step in. So that's where the home is for us. It's not the emergency housing, it's that next step of pouring into them and building them up. Yes?
What volunteer opportunities does your organization have?
Everything. So for over 5 years, I was a volunteer, and now I've hired 2 other staff. So there's 3 of us, and the rest of the staff in the home are volunteers. I've paid for their training. I provide their training, and they're volunteers, again, to keep it sustainable. We're not funded by the government. We are mostly funded by individuals who support us on a regular basis with their time, their money, and their talents. And then we do fundraisers, and yes, we apply for grants, and we'll get a little bit here and a little bit there. But volunteers, if you have a skill, if you have something you love to do, we can use you. So you can sign up, and we will talk and figure out where to plug you in. If you want to work in the organization behind the scenes, if you want to learn more and get involved with the women, then we will work you towards that as well. Yes,
so,
dear.
say for example, some women move into the house at some point. What are their obligations to be able to live there? Do they have to get a job, or what?
Great question.
What do they have to do?
So the obligations is they have to be willing to work on themselves and work with us to help them work on themselves. That's what it is. And again, so it's basically a family structure, so we do everything together. Everyone, this is breakfast time, this is lunchtime, this is this class, this is this mentorship. We're going to the grocery store, we're getting groceries, we're going to the library. So it's them and the willingness and commitment to keep fighting and for themselves and stay there. Towards the end of their stay, if it's like they would like to either start school or get a job to start building up some money, if we are in agreement, the staff and the resident are in agreement that they're at a place where there's not a safety issue, that they've been making some good progress, then we know a few ideas of programs and mentorships to get them some skills and even to move on later for a job, or even just for savings to save for as they leave. Because when they graduate, we're not just gonna go, high five, hope you make it. We wanna keep working with them and supporting them with other resources to help them continue to move forward and not go backwards. So does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah,
You
I
asked a little more.
Like, what about women that may have children that are being exploited? Is that a place that they could come, or how does that,
Ooh.
there are other resources for them?
Well, that's the fun part with the state is, so no, they cannot, I should have left that plugged in, sorry, I touched it. So they cannot come with their kids. Unfortunately, there was a nonprofit I was all excited we were gonna partner with and work with, as they have in other states, to help provide support so a kid could be a kid and safe while the mom could heal to be a better person and a mom again. But that nonprofit is barely holding it together, and so I don't have an answer for that here for us right now. But yeah, we can't help them in the home if they have kids, custody of the kids. Yes.
Are there any churches involved, or you?
Yes, I'd like many more, but but yes, we always are trying to work and collaborate with churches. So we have different partnerships. Some just give us money, some let us speak, some direct people to volunteers. It's a mixture of whatever. We'll take all of it. It's all good. Every dollar counts. Every person. Every time we can spread the word about what we're doing, because we are mostly volunteer run. Every part of it. So. We just want good volunteers anywhere that they are, yes.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Do you work with the government at all to regulate these strip joints or anything?
No, but I keep saying the same things I said to you. And actually, I've met with many officials. Actually, I'm waiting to see, I think a few things have come out, but our representatives just had a human trafficking, I forget what name they gave it. Anyhow, they were having hearings. And so I was one of the organizations, we were there. There's many organizations throughout the state that providing different services, different things that came and spoke to give them the whole spiel of what we see, what's happening, and what needs to be done. And they heard a lot from me about group homes. And what's the problem, because we are grouped in the elderly group homes. We have to follow rules that, serving elderly is what we have to follow. Anyhow, sorry, sidetrack. So I will gladly speak to them. I have spoke to many representatives, and there are many survivors nationally that are involved in survivor leadership, which is great as well. So there are voices that are being heard. But again, it is true, it is the one by one by one. If the captain says this is what we're doing, okay, then they obey, right? But it is the captain doing it? Otherwise, it's just this one over here, the one over here. So again, how we work as people, it is still the one by one. And so there's a lot of groups that are out there, getting out there, and I am one of them as well. I've been into schools as well. I love talking to high schoolers there, because I can be very clear and very blunt, because they're not surprised by anything. They're just surprised an adult is actually talking to them about things like this. When I talked to them about strip clubs and said, well, if you want to settle for that instead of the real thing, you're missing out. And they were just, what? I'm like, yeah, don't play games. You want the real thing, the best is the real. Don't be watching, because the apps and the videos, girls hardly watched porn before. That has changed. Almost as many girls watch porn as boys do, but for very different reasons. Because of our technology. They watch porn so they can perform and they'll be liked.
Wow.
So kids need to hear from us adults about sex in a healthy way. Yes?
Two things. First, recently saw the movie Sound of Freedom, which
Yes.
I thought that probably focused more on international.
Mhm.
But I thought that was just a plug for that movie and the great work that that gentleman is doing for all God's children was
Yeah.
his theme throughout that.
Yeah.
And then secondly, is it true that Wisconsin is kind of a vein with,
All the main highways are.
okay,
So we get this weird thing in media
sure.
and in government, right? Like Waukesha, they do arrest people for exploitation, by the way, but sex trafficking doesn't happen in Waukesha. We don't have those people there. But it just, but it does. But again, it's because we get worried about a perception. Like even, so Paul Farrow was talking about trying to get the, what is that thing? Oh, Narcan in all our schools. And he's getting tons of pushback from the schools because we don't have that here. And he's like, look, you don't have to say how much you have. You just need to have this so if it is there, you can save them from dying. And so again, there's perception. So if we have that much issue with putting something just to save a life, straight up, Narcan saves a life if you have fentanyl. Boom, only thing, or you're dead. And they want to give it to the schools and they don't want it in there. So if they can't do it with that, how are they going to learn about trafficking and sex? And so, sorry, I am staying focused, but the communities need to open up their eyes. Us as people need to open our eyes. That just because we don't doesn't mean that other people aren't. We have to protect our kids. We have to stand up for families and kids that don't have families that aren't protecting them. And I think I forgot what I was supposed to circle back to.
Like the vein.
The vein, thank you, the highways. So, yes, sorry, I did go way off on your answer. I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
The highways. So wherever the main highways are, again, hotels all along there, any of them, high end and definitely low end, are used by traffickers all the time. I've done some hotel training as well. And so every major city is more of a hub because here's what I didn't finish. We already know about vulnerable people, right? Then and where there's more people, there's more vulnerable people, right? So again, it makes logical sense that it happens more in big cities because there's more people that will justify and more vulnerable people, but it happens in rural, it happens everywhere because it's not location. But again, where there's more people, more big events like sporting events, it will happen more, but it is happening everywhere.
And if we think that the girls who are being exploited doesn't reach us, the people that are using those services are amongst us, and you would be surprised. I know of a case where a gentleman was a president of something, and the FBI knocked on his door and took away all of the family's computers, and he was trading 60,000 photos of young girls.
Silk Strip Club wanted places downtown so bad, which they now have two. People fought against them very much as they could, but it was still a law they could have strip clubs, so you couldn't really stop them. They wanted two downtown so bad because it's part of big business.
Yeah.
People travel, and that's part of what they want to do. When they travel and they take out the people to the strip clubs as part of business. So yes, it is very intertwined.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
If you have more questions or things come up later, please reach out to me. Take information in the back. You're welcome, and I'll have these red flag cards as well if you want those. Thank you so much.
I realized that was a semi-uncomfortable conversation, and I saw a lot of us like twisting our heads and being uncomfortable, but again, knowledge is power. If we know those things are out there, we can look for the signs and we can help organizations like Krista. So thank you.